All right, so today we are going to be going through the pull request Arnelia made here. Let's create the pull request. I'm checklist by I'm gonna say 003 create pull request. We're gonna tweak the pull request, and what we're gonna be doing is turning the HTML that she made and turning it into JSX. So what is JSX? All right. Consider this variable declaration. H1 tag, hello world, right? We all know what the H1 tag is from HTML. Hello world is the content inside this HTML tag, and they store it inside of a variable called element. This funny tag syntax is neither a string nor HTML. So this is a HTML element, but this in itself is not HTML. Why is it not HTML? Well, one, you never seen HTML go inside of a variable. That is your first key. The fact that you're storing HTML in a variable should remind you of JavaScript, because in JavaScript, variables exist. HTML, you do not have variables like this or this. So it is called JSX, and it is a syntax extension to JavaScript. We recommend using it with React to describe what the UI should look like. JSX may remind you of a template language, but it comes with the full power of JavaScript. JSX produces React elements. We will explore rendering them to the DOM in the next section. Below, you can see the basics of JSX necessary to get you started. So in the past, we talked about the DOM. To understand the JSX, we got to talk about the DOM again and what the DOM is. So a quick reminder of what the DOM is. The DOM is the data representation of the objects that comprise the structure and content of a document on the web page. So it's literally all the HTML and elements that make up the document object. The document being the whole entire page. So if I did inspect console document, what do I get? The document is the whole entire web page. You see, the whole entire web page is the document. So if I want to manipulate, if I want to use JavaScript to manipulate my website, I got to use it through the DOM. I got to query the DOM elements. Let's say like, oops, did not mean click that. I got to query, select like the P tag or the head or the body, and then insert whatever I want to use into that node, into its HTML, etc., etc., etc. Those are things we're gonna kind of hop skip over. We're kind of going a little faster because we were supposed to go through JavaScript and the DOM, but we never got that far with our JavaScript. But we're gonna keep working through it. So you're gonna learn first React's virtual DOM and work backwards to JavaScript's DOM. So React, while JavaScript grabs elements from the document object, React does something similar, except for it doesn't use the actual document. It uses something called the virtual DOM. React has its own representation of the DOM, right? So let's look at what that looks like. Rendering an element into the DOM. Let's say there's a div somewhere in your HTML file, div ID equals root div. We call this a root DOM node because everything inside it will be managed by React's DOM. So this is a regular div, no different than any other div you ever seen. All it does is we gave it an ID of root, so that way we can grab this thing, and every time we grab this thing, we recognize that this thing is behaving as the root of where the virtual DOM will sit. So we put the actual div on the DOM of your browser on the actual document object, and then you query that document object element, this being the root div. And then once you grab that root div, you assign on top of that root div a whole virtual DOM. This is what that looks like. So to render a React element, first pass the DOM element to React DOM.createRoot, then pass the React element to root.render. Applications built with just React usually have a single root DOM node. If you are integrating React into an existing app, you may have as many isolated root DOM nodes as you like. All right, this is just a little note. Usually we only use one root DOM. All right, so what does that look like? Root const root equals, here's the virtual DOM, React DOM.create root. So this is going to create a virtual representation of the document object and place it on top of the element that has an ID of root. So now that we have root, there's const element equals this. This is JSX. This is JavaScript storing an HTML representation. And then on the root object, this is our virtual DOM. Remember our virtual DOM here that is now sitting on top of the root div. We're going to call render the element onto it. So React understands through its virtual DOM that this H1 element should represent an H1 element on as if it's HTML. So we're going to be turning Arnelia's HTML into JSX by essentially assigning it into a variable and rendering it out onto our virtual DOM. So I've done majority of the architecture work through Next.js. It really makes it super easy. So Next.js is already communicating to the virtual DOM. It already placed the virtual DOM on top of the root div. And I can show y'all that as well, I believe. It should be in some index file. Index. Or I might not actually be able to show y'all that because I am not an expert at Next.js, and there are some slight differences. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure where it is. I'd have to search through this to understand how exactly it is placing it on top of the virtual DOM. But essentially, there's a place where it's querying the actual root and placing the virtual DOM on top of it. And then we'll be generating HTML. So let's go back to this. All right. Let me make sure there's nothing else for us to read. JSX. This is what we need to read next. All right. All right. In the example below, we declare a variable called name and then use it inside JSX by wrapping it in curly braces. So this is how we're going to be passing along dynamic values to our JSX by using curly braces and then passing a variable. So const name equal Josh Perez. Josh Perez is a string. And then the element is this JSX H1 element with hello and then whatever name is set to. You can put any valid JSX expression inside the curly braces in JSX. For example, 2 + 2, user plus first name, or format name user are all valid JavaScript expressions. In the example below, we embed the result of calling a JavaScript function, format name user, into an H1 element. So they have a function and they're going to use this function in their H1 element. So what does format name do? It takes in the user and it returns the user.first name plus the user.last name. This is something we might want to recreate when we're handling our data, where we get user objects that look like this: first name, last name, and an object with keys and value pairs. So then the element now is hello, and then format name user, and this itself will return the full name. For example, Sage Leslie would be mine. So we split JSS over multiple lines for readability. While it isn't required when doing this, we also recommend wrapping it in parentheses to avoid the pitfalls of automatic semicolon insertion. This might mean nothing to y'all. So if you ever come across that problem, you know where to look for it. After compilation, JSX expressions become regular JavaScript function calls and evaluate to JavaScript objects. This means that you can use JSX inside of if statements and for loops, assign it to variables, accept it as arguments, and return it from functions. So this is the really important part, returning it from functions. You're going to see things like function, get greeting user, if the information says something, then return this element. If it says something different, then return another element. This type of logic is what we're going to be using to conditionally render the information, the checklist, based off of the user data that we have. So if the user data says 3, we're going to be like, if this thing is equal to 3, then we're going to print 3 pages of this same HTML element with this information, that element, and that information. All right. Let's read this one last section, then we're going to go play with it. You may use quotes to specify string literals as attributes. So what does that mean? Const element equals a href, and then here's a string literal. Versus you may also use curly braces to embed a JavaScript expression in an attribute. So these are attributes on your HTML tag. You have the options of using a string, or you have the options of passing in the curly braces and passing in the JSX alongside. So don't put quotes around curly braces. Important, do not put quotes around the curly braces. That will turn it into a string. You either use quotes or curly braces. Quotes for string values, curly braces for expressions, but not both in the same attribute. Since JSX is closer to JavaScript than to HTML, React DOM uses camel case property for naming convention instead of HTML attribute names. For example, class in HTML becomes class name. Oops. In JSX, tab index becomes tab index. Camel case, like a camel. All right. And then last one. If a tag is empty, you may close it immediately with the slash. So image slash like XML. JSX tags may contain children. Element equals div, and then here's the children underneath the div. So we're gonna see that with our Nilias. All right, yeah, I think that's enough context. Any questions about anything we looked at before we go into this and turn this into JSX? I see no questions. So we're gonna continue and turn this into JSX. One more time, just a reminder. JSX, this funny tag syntax is neither a string nor HTML. You see, this looks like an HTML element, and this is a JavaScript variable. Those are two different languages. This is not JavaScript and HTML combined. What it is called is JSX, which is an extension to JavaScript to describe what the UI should look like. It may remind you of a template language like HTML, but it comes with the full power of JavaScript. JSX produces React elements. We will explore rendering them to the DOM in the next section. All right. I'm gonna turn this into, well, first things first, we're gonna get this page loaded up. So README. We're already in here. I'm pretty sure we're on the right version. 18.7. Let me call install. All right. Now let me run dev. All right. It started at localhost 3000. So here we are, Next.js. Get started by editing pages index.tsx. All right, let's look at pages, right? So if you go through their guide, learn about Next.js, documentation, or anything like that, you will eventually find out information about what is pages. Pages is essentially how Next.js routes, right? So we have pages, then we have the API route, and then our routes underneath that, form responses, users. So let's look what that looks like. API slash users. Oops, I need a number two. It should print out. I did update this. I gotta start my MySQL server if I want this to print out anything. Do. Uh, let's see here. It's like settings, MySQL. There we go. Start MySQL server. So what I'm doing is I'm running a local database to pretend like well, not to pretend. We will have a hosted database being just the tables of information about our users and whatnot. Using a local one to essentially behave that way. Let's see, is this working now? All right, looks like it might be working. All right, cool. So now this is the information coming straight out of my database. We have one user with test ID one. So just messing around with it, making it work. So the point is, pages is specifically how we're creating, how Next.js creates our routes, right? And we're making a RESTful API. So our API is going to be looking like this type of structure where we do users one, there's no users two, so this thing is gonna say nothing found. All right, and then the ability to add users and whatnot. So that is the pages function. So we want a page, right, where the user can essentially hide this, hide floating meeting controls. So we want a page, not under API, because API is going to be handling data. We want a page for our users. I'm gonna make a new folder. And this page for our users is going to allow them to essentially see the templates, right? So we're gonna call this page templates. And then I'm gonna create a new file called index.tsx. Index is the default of a folder. So is essentially where is let me just put this up here. So essentially this is really index.tsx. But since index is the default, it gets hidden, and this understands that this route is really just pointing to whatever is in the index, which is why it's telling us to look to page's index to understand the root of our page, right? So back to this. We now want to have a folder called templates. And in this index page, what we're going to do, we're going to copy this index page because very lazy. Don't want to work too hard to recreate this stuff. We are going to delete all of their code in here. Right. And we're going to say this is not next page. We're not utilizing any of this stuff either, to be honest. Actually, we'll keep the next page. I'm not sure what that does, but we're gonna look into that soon. On this templates page, what do we want to render on it? First, we're just gonna say a div that says hi. All right. And this is gonna be called templates. Now, if we go to templates, we see div hi. So as you can see, templates, this is the default route. It treats it like index.tsx. And we added a new folder. Actually, a new file in here. Actually, we really don't need a new file here. But if we added a new file in here, I'm gonna say slug.tsx. Actually, no. Let me not get ahead of ourselves because we don't really need to see that yet. I know Arnelia was playing around with passing IDs and whatnot and making queries, but I'm just gonna keep it simple and render out the template on the page. So we have templates here. I'm gonna turn this right here. Move this in here again. And then in modules, we're gonna have a module, new folder. We're also gonna call this templates. Why are we doing this? So the logic is gonna be pages is pulling from modules. Pages is just going to call the component that we define in module. In module, each folder is going to be named essentially one of the page to show the building blockness of it all, the modularization of the work. So we're going to turn every single piece of the page into building blocks, then put all those building blocks together and call it one module. And then the page is going to print out that one module. So what does that look like on the smaller scale? We have templates, and in templates, we're going to have a new file. And this first template is going to be called item checklist by recipient and bag dot tsx. So the reason why also some of these should not be tsx. This should not be this should be tsx because this is rendering out tsx. These not so much. Not going to think too hard about it on which one is and is not. Import React from React. So the first thing right here is we're initializing the page with React. So that way this knows that we are using React code. Then the next thing is we're going to say const, and we're going to create our function, and we're going to assign that function into a variable. So I'm going to show you the two ways we can do it. First, I'm going to show you the function, just creating a function straight up. Function item checklist by recipient and bag. So what does this thing take? It's gonna take client information, form responses, form responses as argument. So for now, we're gonna leave it empty because we don't actually have form responses from the database. Didn't work through that yet, but will happen eventually. So this is going to essentially just return everything Arnelia wrote. So I'm using the parentheses to wrap the return value because return usually just returns a value in one string. In one line. The other option would be to make everything Arnelia wrote a variable, but I'm not going to do that. So just take this. Need to make sure the indentation is correct so that way I can properly see where these things start and where they end. I don't know why my tabs are so large. There we go. All right. So the first error is saying is, hey, these are not real. We don't know what classes are because we're not HTML. This is JavaScript. So I got to change this to class name. And that's for everywhere we at class. I'm going to just change that. Now we have this span needs a closing span. All right, I think it's done complaining. All right, so let's see what this looks like on our page. So the last thing we're going to do is we have to export these functions. Export function. So that's one way to do it, but I want to do it this way. So that way, export default. Actually, we can just export it like this. There's a few ways to do it. You could also do export default and then just call it the name. No real preference for me. Sometimes it depends on how your page packages. That makes it different. And like how you do this really does affect how you import it. I'm gonna say for now we're gonna stick to this format. This is gonna be the preferred format for exporting. And the reason for that is because I want to also add an index file here. A TS. And what this index file is going to do is at the root of templates is always going to export everything from item checklist and recipient bag. So now when we pull out from modules and we go to modules templates, we'll be able to grab all the templates that's accessible from the index just by calling templates rather than calling item checklist by recipient bag. This is kind of packaging the work up together to make just one module, right? So let me show you what that looks like now. In Pages, I'm going to go back to templates in our index file. We are now going to import from. So what are we importing? We are importing source source modules and then templates. And then from here, item recipient checklist like that. So if we didn't have that index file, we'd have to say item recipient checklist bag. But the reason why we do not want to do it this way is because we're going to have two of these. Remember, we're going to have this one and then we're going to have the other one. So ideally, we're going to have them in separate files, both under templates. And then we're just going to fetch, we're going to import both from the index file of templates. So now we can just say instead of hi, we're gonna render out we are gonna render out item checklists. And like they said, that we can just close the tag like this. So this is what we're gonna do to just close out the tag. All right, successfully compile. Let's look what our web page looks like now. All right, name, phone number, address, distribution method, grocery item bag, All right, this might be looking like that because we're using a next page, which comes with its own design. Does it make a difference? No, no. All right, let's see. The next thing we gotta do is fix our styling. So the question is, where is this thing getting the styling from? Come snitch for me. Let's see. Inherited from HTML, templates 1, templates 22, 3, 4. Okay, this isn't really telling me exactly where these styles are coming from. All right, well, I can pretty much assume where it's coming from. We have our styles section. So let's go into the styles section. We have the global CSS, body, background black, color white. We're gonna switch that around. Background is gonna be white, and color is gonna be black. All right, cool. All right, so now styling this page. Arnelia provided us some styling. We're gonna tweak her styling a bit. But before we do that, we're gonna commit because we made a whole bunch of changes and we want to make sure we capture some of these changes before we make new changes and possibly break something. So we're gonna commit at this stopping point to make sure that we remember we are at this point. Git status. That's a lot. Using this might be better. Sometimes the command terminal is not helpful. And that's when it looks busy. All right, so this got deleted. What are these? Modules, because we move modules over. What is this? Source modules. Yes. This is correct because we move modules over. We're gonna make that a separate commit. And then source modules, source modules, source modules, and source modules. All right, that's all the things we moved over. What is this? Pages, source modules, templates. All right. First things first, minor commit, move modules folder to source. All right. Then the next thing major we did was we added this template module. I'm gonna delete this whole file. Let's take that off. Commit, add template. Add template page. We might rename this to checklist because that makes more sense than template page. Yeah. And then we're gonna rename this to checklist. And then one more thing. Rename these to checklists. All right, cool. So for pages, pages has to do export default. So this is most definitely how we're doing it for pages. For modules, do it the other way. Turn it into an object. Uh, all right. Now the next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna delete the template. I'm gonna take this. First thing we're gonna do is add this to our global CSS, and then we're gonna move it and modularize it. But for now, I want to make sure it works. What do you mean? Checklist. All right, cool, cool, cool. Cool, cool, cool. Um, how are they using this home module? Let's see how they're using this to modularize them. We have pages. Let's find their home page. Import styles from styles home module.css and then styles. Import styles. So they have this whole object, and I guess they can just import styles from it. I've seen const styles and setting it into a variable, but let's try this. Let's try this. Global CSS. We're gonna take out all of our Arnelius stuff that we just put in here. We're gonna make a new file. New file. I'm gonna call it checklist dot module dot css. And then just like this, we're gonna try and import it. And then we're gonna assign it by class name. Hmm. I don't think it likes the dashes. Let's try. All right.
I think it's because you're on the wrong ID.
What do you mean? What do you think the problem is first?
We're the div ID. Because if you go to
So the first issue, right? The first issue was the typing.
the
So
dashes.
the left hand side of an arithmetic operation. So this thing, it doesn't even know what this is, right? It cannot handle hyphens, right?
Hmm.
That's why it's complaining because it doesn't know how to use a hyphen on the as a key of the styles object. But if I change it to underscores, it understands underscores as spaces. And so now it can use this as a key of styles. Right. So now
Okay.
the styles is going to be picking up. So now it's going to be doing twofolds, right? It's going to be assuming its class name is item checklist wrapper and also be applying the styles of item checklist wrapper to this class. This might be specifically Next.js logic, but that was what the complaint was about, the syntax of the key of styles. Um, let's go through a few of these. I don't think we're using the ID anyway for styling. As you can see, there's no IDs for stylings. We're just using classes right now, which is generally preferred anyway. Um, let's see here. This is still going to be interesting because I've never used it like this, but we're gonna see how this works. I'm usually using a third party API for styling. Class name, we go bolded. I want to see if any of these styles are coming in. how does this work? There's no real export here. I think it's because I'm in the wrong folder. Unlike index, this is 2 folders up. All right, nope. Can't resolve styles module. Check with modules. Using CSS files in adding a global style sheet. We already have that. Body, create a pages app.js file, then import the style. We got to import it to the app.js file. Okay, there we go. So in our cases, it'll be app.tsx. All right, but this has global style CSS, not the home. The style CSS will apply to all pages in your application. Due to the global nature of style sheet and avoid complex conflicts, you may only import them inside pages app.js. In development, specs and style sheets, this will allow your styles to be hot reloaded as you edit them. I mean, you can keep application state, node modules, add component level CSS. Here we go. Support CSS modules using name module CSS. CSS modules locally scope CSS by automatically creating a unique class name. This allows you to use the same CSS class name in different files without worrying about collisions. This behavior makes CSS modules the ideal way to include component level CSS. CSS module files can be imported anywhere in your application. For example, consider a reusable button component in the components folder. First, create components /button.module.css with the following content. Then create components button, importing and using the above CSS file. This makes it seem like I should just have it available. All right, let's try this again. Maybe it's because of my naming. Because I'm trying to use it in here. I need to name it this specifically. So I think that's what it is, right? So this is what we're gonna do. Let's try making a All right, first we're gonna verify if I know what I'm talking about. In this, we're gonna make a new file, item.module.css, and then we're gonna hop, skip, drop all this in there. And now in here, we are going to import styles instead from dot slash. This thing don't know it. I'm checklist. Oops. CSS. All right, so for this thing to do what it does, everything must contain at least one local class or ID. All right, but see, this is how it works. It does need the exact name to use that. If that's the case, then we're gonna shove things. We're gonna create styles folders inside the folder styles. Shove this in here. Import from styles. See if that works. All right, same complaint. So it seems like that's good enough. All right. Hopefully this is not looking too crazy. Checklist has styles, item checklist. Uh, and this we need to rename how we're doing these. Instead of the P tag and A tag. mm, 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 mm. What we're gonna do is we have item checklist wrapper, right? We're gonna say the P tags underneath item checklist wrapper and A tags underneath it. That way, one, we're being more specific. What is it complaining about? Colon expected. Colon expected. Where is the colon expected? What am I doing wrong? Hmm. Let me know if y'all see what I'm doing wrong here. Item checklist wrapper. P CSS font size. I think it's I think it's this. Is it this? No. Ooh, do. Let's see. Well, one, we moved it. So you should be. It's not just that. Let's see if they have an example of using it. P color blue, div background red, media div background blue. Yeah, I'm not doing anything special. This is the same thing, just nesting it. Why does it not like my nesting? What am I doing wrong? Mm, there we go. And all right. Oh man, let's try that. Oh man, CSS can be so annoying. Mm. Mhm. Yeah, I know somebody else experienced this. Let's see. You can use global to make nested.
I found an example on like
Mhm.
CSS for nesting. I'm gonna show it, put it in the chat. Oh,
All right. This is saying this pseudo class of global should work. Is a CSS module thing supported by Next. But it seems I need to extract both classes from the modules. All right, let's try this. Div global. I think I still need to put a class. No, nope. Yeah, that seems like the example I was following. Mm, oh man. All right, it might just be VS Code and not actually be a problem. All right, let's see which works. Let's just see what works. We're gonna see if this comes up at all. Selector global P is not pure. Pure selector must contain at least one local class or ID. Yeah, I think it needs. Yeah, I think it needs to have class names or ID names. That seems to be the rule. Why could it not just be like this? But what we're gonna do is we're gonna use inline CSS styling for. Should we? Should we? Should we or should we not? Now I see why at my company we use style components because styling this stuff is kind of not super intuitive, at least for the P's. Like we have to add a class name to everything, which is there are third party uh there are third party applications to essentially assign class names to all these things and make our lives easier. So what I'm gonna do, right? I'm gonna show you lazy way of coding, right? I do not want to write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 class names. Instead, what I want to do is const user information.
hey, do you also want to try like a pound my div and see if that works? Put it
Uh
into CSS in front of the P.
um no matter what, we still have to add a class name to this, right?
Oh, okay.
So what I'm doing now is I'm gonna tweak this so that way we're no longer writing out the class names individually. We're gonna make them elements, right? It's gonna be an element, or I guess another function, user information paragraph. What this thing is gonna do is gonna take in some text, and whatever that text is going to return the p tag with a class name of item checklist paragraph. or user information. Let me just call this user info for short. And class name, user info. And then these are also not going to be this. This is going to be an object styles dot user info paragraph. Then we're going to add JSX here and print out the text. All right. It has any type. This is a string. Also, we haven't really talked about TypeScript, but TypeScript is JavaScript with types. So it forces you to be explicit about what you're using. So this is a string. Now I gotta tell everything that this is a string, so that way it knows. So we got that, and then we're also gonna have const user. Let me just change this user info paragraph. User, and since this is a function, I'm gonna say get user info paragraph. And then user information, user info, say titles. I guess these are titles, fields, columns. I don't know. User info fields. And then we're going to turn it into an array of name, phone number. And y'all going to see why this is low-key better than what we have going on right now. Address, distribution method, and COVID concern. Will, I hope you are here. Because this is gonna dive into your ticket. What is
Forgot the semicolon for distribution method.
I'm debating on how I'm gonna do that, right? The only reason why is because fields. Yeah, I'm gonna make it so that way the fields are gonna be on the fields, and then this is gonna be on this. Now we're gonna iterate over these, and we're gonna make a get user info for each of these, right? So JSX again, user info fields dot map. We have not gone through array functions yet, so y'all haven't learned about those, but this is an array function called dot map is going to iterate over every value in this, and it's going to change it to whatever we return it to be. So we're going to change each of these fields into a paragraph. User info paragraph. All right, so let's look at this. I know it's not going to have the correct thing. It should be something like that. Oh yeah, we gotta fix all these styles. User info paragraph. Hide floating meeting controls. Yeah, just don't like selector table. We're gonna take out the table anyway. Most likely. We might not, but we most likely will. Li Gotta take this out. All right, so boom. Now we have name, address, distribution method, COVID concern. The CSS don't look correct because I'm pretty sure I'm missing something. A is font size 14. I'm guessing these should be bolded. Where's that bolded class? Just this one. Style, span, bolded. User info. That's why it doesn't have it. Okay. So I gotta fix this user info. I hate the fact that VS Code doesn't know how to understand that. So I'm gonna change that to that. This to this. Yep, there we go. Back to big. Um, Grocery item bags. I don't really care to change this from what it is right now. So we're gonna stick to a table for now. Or actually probably just forever. Unless reasons come to change this from a table. Maybe on the second iteration when Will is trying to make his, we might change it from a table. But for now, I think this is fine. So it seems that both ways work because oh no, table information and table information. So yeah, make sure not to use hyphens for your class names, uh, unless you're using them as strings. Hmm. So, all right. So one thing I'm noticing, right? We might not even need to do this. I think you could just do user info like this, right? So we have user dash info. We're not really seeing any changes here. I want to see like a big change. I change that to infon, nothing. What if I change this to styles, user info? Now it changes. And then just string of user info. Yeah. Okay, it does need to be in this format. I was like, maybe it does know the thing by the ID. I mean, not the ID, by using the string as well. As long as it has the value, it could find it. But nah, it definitely changes the styling. Not sure if y'all seen the big difference, but it definitely does affect the styling. Table information is down here. We're gonna move all this stuff to table information. And oh, this is gonna kill me how it doesn't know it. Is there an extension for this? CSS. Not CSS support. Mm, it might be this one. Damn it. All right, I'm gonna have to figure out what the hell I need to do to make this thing not be so ugly. Um, because I would love to do and something like that. I'm not even sure if I could do and. Can it read ands? Hmm. Looks like you can't. All right. Before I play around with this too much, I do not know what's going on. So we're gonna say table information. TD. Arnelia, did you mean to make these both TDs? Was one of these supposed to be table row and one of these supposed to be TD? Arnelia, did you mean to make both of these table rows? Okay, I don't know if you doze off, not paying attention anymore, or you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought I wasn't fully plugged in. Okay, so the table, the second TD is only for the bottom height, so that it could be that long. That's why there's two TDs.
How does that work?
Because if you take away the height, it's small. I don't even have it anymore, so I can't even show it. But it controls the bottom height of the lower table.
Shows the bottom height.
And then the first table is connected to, so it has to be connected to the other table. Do, 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 do. You had to create one for the table too, because you only put it in the TD when I had it in the table and TD.
I'm sorry, I'm a little confused by your logic. You had in the table and TD.
Yes,
Table is picking up table information, right? Table information is the font size. You said you had this in the table and the TD.
yes.
Right, we're gonna just call this table information. So now they both have that.
Okay, cool.
All right. We're getting a little
Closer, but something is off.
so now your table head needs a bottom border, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure about this, to be honest. This is a little confusing because I'm like, table head should just be table head. No,
Yeah, so I don't know how you did that.
nah, this is
Oh, you mean put in a TR?
like I'm saying like a table head should just be the table head. You don't need like a table row and a table data for the table head. Is this
But
for
then
something
it looks like
solid?
that.
Well, yeah, because you gotta style your elements correctly. You can't just like so what you're doing here is you're using the elements to style your elements, right? You're forcing this table row and the table head to style your grocery item bag rather than styling your table head correctly. You shouldn't use elements to control your styling. We have CSS for that.
Okay.
So we got to learn to make the styling behave as we want this to. So we want this to be in the center. All we got to do is center it. Let's try this out. Style. Display. Is there a display center? Am I tripping?
Just a line item center.
Line item center. Is there? No. Align content center. No. Uh, justify content. Nope. There we go. I didn't have display flex on it.
Oh, cool.
All right. It should just be justify content.
The display flex is not checked. But it's not doing it again.
Mm, display flex justify item. Justify content. All right. So we're gonna take table head. Last name. I can't keep writing these long ass names. User info underscore P. So that's how we're gonna do it. We're gonna just do underscore and then the type of element it is. We're gonna follow that format for now. If it's a div, you don't have to do the underscore. Just name it what the div is. Div table information, table information. Then we have table head. Let's go through this. This is going to be underscore P. Underscore P. Bolded. User info, table information, table information. I'm gonna just name these table info. I'm just trying to shorten these down a little bit so a little easier to read. Um, all right, table info, T head, and then we have our T body. Can I add display flex, justify content, and one more thing. I want to add bottom border bottom solid. So this is what I was talking about, Nelia. Like this is literally all you had to do. Border bottom solid, and then the weight of it, 1px, bpx. Copy these. This is going to be in the table head. T head. Mm, Hmm. I might be using this wrong. You might have had it right, Anelia. Yeah, you had it right. You're right. Table row into table head. Man, I do not use tables. Mm, okay, you had it correct. I'm used to this thing being a div. I'm treating it like a div. Wait, order. Check this. Wrong thing. Check this right back. That's border. 1px solid. Man, this is not hard to turn to a div at all. All right, here we go. That. So it's not justifying content. I could have sworn I put that in there. Oh, it says div. Now, why does our bottom border look like that? Oh, because there's two borders. We're gonna try deleting all of this, deleting all of this. Let's see what happens. All right, cool. All right, so you see how I simplified it, Arnelia? This is why I was,
Yeah, that was real easy.
yeah, this is why I was saying how the table is excessive. Like we don't necessarily need a table. It's really just a div and then another div with a bottom border. So one div, the big div that has the big border, another div which has a grocery item bag with a bottom border, and then all the little elements, the li elements that's going to be in the grocery bag. For now, holding the li's is good, but the same way how we did this, essentially we do the same for this, where we'd populate these based off of the information on the thing. But for the sake of this ticket, this is enough. So we have now successfully turned your JSX element into your HTML element into JSX. So last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna clean this up a little bit, commit it, push it up, and then merge it all in. Before we get there, the last thing we gotta fix is this COVID concern thing, right? So um, we're gonna say this thing produces text, and then this part is gonna be conditional. Const conditional. What do y'all call these? What is that?
Semicolon.
Like generically, semicolon, colon. That's just punctuation. Punctuation. Yeah, just punctuation. So we're gonna call this conditional punctuation. So that way it's very clear that this is going to be our punctuation depending on what we have. And the only time we don't want it to be this is when it's COVID concern. So if uh, we're gonna say this is also gonna be a function, so we need to compare it, and we're gonna say text string. If the text equals oops. If the text strictly equals COVID concern, well, we're gonna return a question mark. We're gonna say this might look a little weird, but otherwise it should be this might look a little weird, but hopefully y'all understand. This is the conditional if else ternary statement. Text triple equals COVID concern, then we're gonna print out the question mark. Otherwise, we're gonna print out this. And so the same way how they showed us, we can also pass in expressions. So now we have this, and this is now getting a little hard to read as one line. So we're gonna wrap it in curly braces. Make sure to return this value since it's wrapped in curly braces. And that way now it's on its own line and it's pretty easy to read what this is doing. So we have user info fields. We have a list of user info fields. We have this function to generate whether it's a question mark or this. And then we have our last get user info paragraph, which will turn our information, manipulate these text strings into the proper format. And then last but not least, we iterate over the fields and turn each field into this P tag with class name, with the proper class name. So as you can see, now we have name, phone number, distribution method, and then COVID concern. And see how this This is now making it dynamic and we have to write less code. Now, if we ever wanted to add another field, all we got to do is say another field, save that, and then boom. So now we don't ever have to recreate the wheel that we just created. Now, every time we add information, it will just create more information like that. The only difference for will is going to be some minor changes, but generally it's going to want to work and function the same way as this one does. And we're going to get to a point where we even reduce the logic and make it more abstract. So that way we can just use this one component as the base, and then the other two components kind of pull from this one component. So whenever Will works through his PR and gets back up and running, then we'll work and do another workshop like this where we show you how to make your modules, how to make your components abstract. And what I mean by abstract is that it can handle different use cases depending on what it is. So instead of something like item checklist by recipient and bag, we'd probably have a function called item checklist and then pass it a value that says recipient and bag. And when it gets recipient bag as a value, it'll know to print out this stuff in the format of the recipient and bag. And then if we pass just recipient, it'll know to format it in just the recipient way. So that's something we'll show next time. The last thing I'm gonna show y'all is the same way how we have two different ways to write functions. We have writing the function, and then we have assigning the function to a variable. My preference is always assigning functions to variables. So I'm going to turn this into a variable called const item checklist by recipient bag. And then we're going to use an arrow function. So it's the same as a regular function, just instead of using an arrow, and it's known as being anonymous because it has no name. So it doesn't require as much space on the computer to store it. Not naming your functions means that your computer doesn't need to memorize this function as something that exists. So that's why we have the slight preference of using functions this way with arrow functions. Just that way we can reduce the memory cost on your computer. All right. So some cool things we did today. We learned how to make style sheets in the architecture of React.js. We imported modules, moved them around. We turned this HTML file into JSX. And then we also played with pages. We created a new page, the checklist page. So those are all things that we did today. Good job, y'all. I'm going to delete this, move to trash. And we're going to save our CSS changes. Checklist. Bolded. I don't really know what this is for yet, but I'm pretty sure we'll remember.
That was for the no, like for the answer in COVID concern.
What? Oh, okay. So when someone fills out the answer, it turns into a no or a yes.
Into a bolded answer, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna make sure I leave. All right, one last thing. This is the last thing we're gonna do because we kind of know the fields that we want. We have form responses somewhere here. P the schema. Oh, we're not on mine. Okay. Git branch. Yeah. All right. We're gonna do one last thing. Let me just merge this stuff in. All right. Update CSS. Git commit -m. Update CSS. All right, and then we're gonna merge main into this branch. So every day when y'all pull down main, make sure to merge main into your branch. Oh, it is. Well, no, it's not in here. I know why it's not in here, because I'm on 001 host API DB. All right, we have the schema file that's gonna have the form responses on it. This is stuff I'm working on still. So I'm gonna copy this because this is what the form responses are gonna generally look like. We're gonna go back to Arnelia's branch. Three. I didn't do it in this shell. Git checkout. 003 create. All right. Form responses as proper argument. So our form response is going to come in the shape of something like this. So TypeScript gives us the ability to be explicit about what type of type our form response will look like. I'm going to say export type form response. You can say type, or you can also use interface. I'm gonna use interface because I kind of prefer interface. And it's gonna have all these values. Just delete this. And turn all these into regular strings. And these are all strings. All right, which ones are these are not strings? Phone number, phone type, address ID. Address ID might be a string. Is black Boolean, is local Boolean, has full symptom Boolean, household members number. We're gonna say the IDs are all strings for now. Item requests, string, Boolean, 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 Boolean. All right. So we're gonna get some props in here that has the shape of form response. Or no. Okay. So I'm using this to say essentially we're gonna have some props in here passed into this component that's gonna be in this shape. If it's not in this shape, it might be undefined. So it's either this or it's nothing, which is fine for now if it's nothing, because it'll just be empty. But when it is populated, what we're gonna have is what we're gonna return now is not just text. D tag. we're gonna need a whole other component. All right, this is gonna get more complicated than it needs to be for time. But essentially we turn these into, let me this up. And this is an example of a time where you would probably want to turn this into its own component, maybe. Um, Even though it's a pretty small component, it's nice to have these things separate. So this would be a p tag, and not only a p tag, but then after the p tag and whatever the hell, it'll be another p tag. Um, and this p tag would probably have like the form information. So form. Form responses. Another thing you can do is do this. This is saying that this thing is conditionally passed, so it might not be passed. Um, if we get form responses, then we want to pass form responses. If we get it, then we're going to pass another p tag, and the p tag should honestly be the form response and the information based off of this type of value. So realistically, I would turn this into an object. We're not going to do that today, but the idea of it would be form response. If form response exists, then we're going to do a p tag with form response, which would be an object, and then the key being essentially it should be similar to the text. This is complaining, especially elements without any type because expression type string can't be used. Index type form string. So it's pretty much saying that this is not a valid key on form response, which is true. It is not a valid key. But yeah, we didn't turn this into an object yet. But if we turn this into an object, essentially it'd be something like name points to name. And then when it iterates over these, instead of it saying just the text, it grabbed the value of name. So it get name as an object, and it'd be like text dot name or some shit like that. But yeah, there's too much pseudocoding. I'd rather turn into what it should be for real, for real. But yeah, this is just ways to make your data easier to show if you understand it. All right. With that said, I'm going to put this as a comment. We'll add this later. To display form responses. What time is it? 8:42. All right, we're gonna end in by 9. We'll add this later to display form responses. And then one comment over here. Turn this into iterable list based off form responses. And also, what else? Well, the span thing, yeah, we'll have to cover that logic in the span.
Also the grocery bag items,
Grocery bag items. I mean,
like in grocery item bag, like that also had like a number.
oh yeah. All right. So these comments are super helpful when you're making your code. So that way you can remember that these are stuff that needs to be done. And then we'll get to them later. I like to add to-dos generally. Move to interface. All of our interfaces will be in one place or one folder, and then we'll grab them from there rather than like doing it like this. It's all in the name of modularity. Every single thing should kind of do one thing and make it very clear and obvious what it's doing. That way we can make it as easy as read as possible. All right. Let me wrap this up. All right, now the last step here is when the branch is up, right? Somebody should go look at the files change, read through the changes, make sure nothing crazy happened, that everything is as expected. Da, 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 da. And then when reviews are done, hey, looks good to me, approve. I can't approve it because I made the last changes. So anybody else who wants to go on this and review this PR, it'd be much appreciated. Oh, it's not passing. Let's see. We're gonna run npm run build so that way we can see how this thing failed. Because we should be good, but there might be some minor things here and there. CD. What was that error? Type is missing properties from the following. I could have sworn I said props or nothing. Jeez. All right. I do not want to fix it that way. I hate that way. What we're gonna do is we're gonna make sure they understand that this is conditional. It's not always passed in. And it should, this is probably the better way to do it over the other way. Props is declared but never used. Yeah. All right, let's see if that got it not complaining. Nope, still complaining. I'm literally telling you, that this thing sometimes comes, or undefined. All right, it does not care. If I pass this in here, it wants it. All right, we're just gonna take this out for now. And we're gonna move this comment down here. That way, when whoever works on this in the future, they should be able to just easily comment this out and understand what this thing is, the purpose of this thing is. All right. Now it should stop complaining. All right. The other option is to make mock data. Mock data would be like const mock form response equals, and you'd also make this a form response type. And then from there you'd add all the fields. Is black true. You know, you'd fake make it and then just pass it along, but we're not doing this either. That's more so for when you want to test it and work on it locally and you need to see the values being passed in. Sometimes you can just make your values, make the fake data. But yeah, this should be good for now. Git commit -- amend, right quick, push that up. Nope. Just me fixing it. All right. That should fix it. All right. Was that a good class? Y'all learned a lot. Any questions? Any questions on what y'all should look at?
No questions, but that was really fun and good. Oh.
All right. Sounds good. Hopefully y'all learned a lot. When y'all are working on your project, please, 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 please. I'm gonna post this video. I know I haven't posted a few. I'm definitely posting this one. Please play this video back, watch it, review it, so that way you know what to do when you are doing your own version and going through it until this thing becomes committed to your memory.